talking to the chair of the Select Committee into dyslexia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia and dysgraphia. And perhaps the best way to start would be for you, Rob Callister, to tell us what all of those things are and why you needed to have a select committee to look into this.
Well, this originally came from a petition on Tynwald Day. So it just shows that, when people make these petitions, Tynwald members do look at them. And this one caught my attention. And this is about learning differences. This is about making the system better. We know dyslexia is a very common one that people know. The others relate to, for example, numbers. But for me, the dyslexia one is one that really gets repeated time and time again. And if we actually can put the support in place early on, right at primary school, secondary school, and then going into college or university, this can help people, and this will make a massive difference to the Isle of Man, because if you capture it early, you support people early on, then hopefully what happens is they're not captured later on in adult life, which then becomes very difficult. And this is from somebody who does suffer from slight dyslexia. I do sometimes get my words mixed up, and I do get names mixed up, and I think I'm not alone with that. So to me, this has been a great achievement, and to work alongside Mrs. Cornish and Mrs. Corlett on this committee has been absolutely fantastic. You have 3 Tynwald members who are really passionate about this topic, and hopefully that came through in the report. But it was also fascinating to speak to teachers who are on the front line dealing with this. You spoke to parents who really genuinely struggled to get the support for their children that they need. And we spoke to students who had been left behind, and then suddenly in their 20s and 30s trying to sort support to give them a meaningful life.
Why do all teachers need follow-up training? I mean, they all get training on this sort of thing. People with learning differences, this is part of the standard training procedures. So why do they need a compulsory update?
Well, I think all teachers need some training on this, because from our evidence and from our committee report, it is not consistent. So each school does it slightly different. Some children are being identified early and the support's given, some are not, and they're being missed. So what we're trying to do in this report is to make sure there is an element of consistency. So it doesn't matter where your child goes to school, it doesn't matter which parent is asking for support. If all of these 12 recommendations are implemented by the Department of Education and implemented in our schools and in our colleges, then hopefully people will receive that extra support they need. But more importantly, parents will not feel frustrated that some of their calls for more support and for teachers to be able to support them will not be overlooked. And you've got to remember, in this report, it does identify that teachers were very scared to identify children who may or may not have dyslexia. So we've got to build the confidence that teachers are able to assess students early on in preschool or even primary school, and then be able to pass that information on to secondary education and say this child will need a little bit more support. And even someone coming through secondary school going into university saying this child may need a little bit more support. It's about nurturing the support and nurturing the training and making sure that we capture this very early. And I'm so grateful to everyone in Tynwald for supporting these 12 recommendations. In fact, 11 of our recommendations was as printed on our report, which is fantastic. The only one that the Council of Ministers managed to actually get the amendment through was a recommendation 7, which relates to SENCOs. And I think on that one, they will have a date in October 2027. But given everything else is now in December 2026, I hope the department will actually come back and give us an update on recommendation 7 in December and not just wait to the next year.
I mean, you've been through an electoral cycle. You know what happens when, by the time you get to the end of July, Tynwald, all the big decisions stop, and pretty much the political element of Isle of Man government grinds to a complete standstill. How is it going to be possible for the department to respond and bring a meaningful report, bearing in mind from really from July probably to mid-October, there'll be very little political action undertaken. So even if the officers are diligently carrying out bits of work, there's no political input really.
Well, if we just take that point, so what actually is going to happen is there are several of these recommendations that have now been approved in Tynwald, where the Department of Education is going to have to come back in December and give an update. So it's not the final report, it's not the finished article. What we're asking for, and what Tynwald's agreed today, is they will have to give a progress report. So the officers can work in the background, they can look at all of these recommendations and have the new minister in October, if it's not the current one, the new minister will actually be able to stand up in December and give a progress report about delivering these services around dyslexia and other learning differences. Now, by doing that, it is far better for the new administration to say this is still on the radar, this is the upgrade, the progress report. But if we didn't do that today, then we'd have to wait till October 2027 to get that progress. To me, that's set so far into the future that I think there will be children lost between now and October 2027. And what we're actually saying is we cannot afford to lose any more children due to the fact that they've not been identified as having dyslexia or dyscalculia or dyspraxia or dysgraphia. We've got to identify these signs earlier and give the support to them, because if not, it's another generation lost.
Do you think the government side would have been more successful if they'd have said something like February or March, April 27, given them a little bit more time, but not effectively a whole year and a quarter?
Well, if you look at several items that were on the Tynwald order paper this particular month, they've actually had, it seems to be October 2027 for everything. And I don't know if they just pulled a date out of a hat or something, because both items, or 2 or 3 items on the order paper, had October 2027. That's far too far into the future. Yes, we have a new administration coming in September, but on this report, to actually give that update within 2 months of a new administration, the members should be settled in. The officers will already be working on this over the summer period. It's absolutely right, especially as I highlighted in this report. There are children being forgotten today. There are parents that need support today. Let's have that date of December 2026. All we're asking for is a progress report. And even if I'm not in the chamber in December 2026, I want to actually see that update. And I want to see the department implementing these recommendations as soon as possible, because that was the will of Tynwald. And even the minister said, absolutely agree with the recommendation. It's just the date they were unhappy with.
So finally then, what's the difference going to be? I mean, in terms of people, particularly parents of children who have these conditions, what are you hoping is going to have changed over the course of the next year or so?
Okay, so if these 12 recommendations are implemented as printed, and they are implemented as quickly as possible, what you'll find is that students going to school in the future will be identified early if they have dyslexia or dyscalculia, dyspraxia or dysgraphia. Then what we'll also have is better trained teachers. That's what they were asking for. So we're going to have better trained teachers. We'll also, and those teachers will have the confidence to be able to identify students with additional learning needs. We'll also have a system which then translates that from one school to the next. So they'll be passing on information to say this student needs extra support. So at the start of a new school, that student will already be identified that they need extra support. And if they go to, say, for example, the Alaman College and they have to do exams, that identification will already be there from the outset. It is going to be game-changing if we implement this correct. And you've got to remember from a society point of view, and I haven't got the figures with me, Phil, but if you actually look at it, there's a high percentage of people within our Isle of Man prison that have some form of dyslexia. Now, if we can capture that earlier, we could also be doing a major initiative for learning difficulties, and from a society's point of view, we'll pick these people up early and give them a proper opportunity to make a positive contribution to our society.
Thank you for making it to the end of the Manx Radio Newscast. You are obviously someone with exquisite taste. May I politely suggest you might want to subscribe to this and a wide range of Manx Radio podcasts at your favourite podcast provider, so our best bits will magically appear on your smartphone. Thank you.